Hey everybody, we all know that Black Clover is known for its superb fights and its amazing ability to stick to the standard shonen formula and oftentimes enhance it. But there is one aspect of Black Clover where it excels that is rarely, if ever, spoken about. So, let's talk about it. Before we begin, I would like to give a huge thank you and shout out to @KizzyKaido over on Twitter for giving me the idea to make this video and tweeting out a long thread where they highlight how brilliantly Black Clover tackles this topic. Before we get into why Black Clover does this best, let's take a look at a couple of examples and set a precedence, and use that to showcase why Black Clover excels at this particular point. Now, if you're a Black Clover fan, or even just an anime fan in general, you know that Black Clover is considered to be a Naruto clone, but I won't waste your time over small surface level similarities that go away once you dive deeper into either of these shows. But an important point to note is that there is a definite reason why Naruto is always called upon. In Naruto, one of the biggest plot points that appeal to the readers is the fact that initially, at least, Naruto was shunned and considered to be a demon child. While this has nothing to do with Naruto's class as such, it is very similar to the treatment that Asta gets for either being a peasant by royals and nobles, or for simply being magicless by everyone else, including Nash, his adoptive little brother. In the case of Naruto, we know that he's been ostracized by society in the first chapter, and we are also reminded of it in many flashbacks, but we barely saw any discrimination against him outside of these flashbacks. Even his classmates treated him only as a class clown, similar to how any other group of children would treat a class clown in a different situation. The next time this plot point makes a huge impact is when Naruto appears after the Leaf Village has been destroyed by Pain. Till this point, there was hardly any focus on Naruto being discriminated against. There are of course many instances where he is shown to be depressed because he is without a family, and these scenes, while beautifully done, do not act as evidence to his discrimination. Next, let's take a look at a more recent series.
Are you alright?
In the world of My Hero Academia, about 20% of the population are quirkless. Now, we see great evidence to point towards the horrible treatment the quirkless receive by those with a quirk. For example, Bakugo's bullying of Deku. We can assume that, while this might not be the universal experience of the quirkless, it is definitely the fact of life for most of the quirkless. Another beautiful way that My Hero Academia tackles discrimination is in the beautiful backstory of Shigaraki, where one hopeful hand from a hero like Deku would have changed the course of his life. The Hero Society birthed the cancer Shigaraki, and now he has vowed to burn it all down. So, now that we're done with setting a couple of precedents with an old gen and a current gen series, let's go back to Black Clover. Now, to understand how Black Clover tackles discrimination, we have to understand what this discrimination is in particular. Let's take a look at how discrimination occurs in the Clover Kingdom. The most obvious type of discrimination is faced by commoners or peasants because of their magic levels. But before we get into it, let us understand how the magic you're born with works. So, in the first place, we have royals, next we have nobles, then commoners, and then finally peasants. Note that this tier list is entirely general and does not take into account the anomalies. But clearly, in this world, magic power has been spread the same way for generations at least for the discrimination to be so rampant. So, the royals look down upon the nobles look down upon the commoners look down upon, you guessed it, peasants. On a side note, there have been exceptions where a royal would get married to nobles, but this doesn't seem to have stopped the discrimination from occurring regardless. Beyond just the magic levels, there are those who are discriminated against for fall from grace. The biggest example I could give you for this is with Gosh and his little sister, who were treated horribly immediately after their parents mysteriously died. This trickles down even to William, who is looked down upon by the king for being only a half noble, or rather for not being a royal. A noble whose name has been tainted is treated worse than a commoner, and is thus another type of discrimination faced by the citizens of the Clover Kingdom. Now that we're done with establishing the general discrimination in the most simplest of terms, let's take a look at how this makes an impact on the narrative.
今日戦場でとんでもない人と一緒になってな。
There are so many great moments in the series where this theme is tackled beautifully, and what makes Black Clover unique is that it goes one step further, because discrimination is not defeated by defeating a physical manifestation of evil, or even through major feats, or even small societal changes, and most importantly, discrimination is never defeated because the main character who is discriminated against suddenly becomes the hero to save the day. So, to demonstrate how discrimination is tackled, let's take a look at two examples from the series. This particular example isn't just great on its own, but comes across during one of, if not the best written arc in all of Black Clover, the Royal Knights arc. Now, I might make another video just breaking down this arc in its entirety, but let's dive into the example for now. The beauty in Tabata's writing is so implicitly explicit in just the way that Zora is introduced. We're introduced to Zora as a villain that defeats a Magic Knights vice captain and has now infiltrated the Magic Knights. Let me make a couple of changes to that statement, and let's understand this a little better. We, the Magic Knights, who are composed of nobles and royals, have been infiltrated by someone we consider a threat, a villain, or a peasant. Now, if the parallel isn't obvious to you yet, let me explain. We're introduced to this villain who infiltrates our heroes, but this clearly is not the real story as we learn later on. So let's take a look at the death of Zara Ideale from the perspective of nobles. A peasant has somehow infiltrated our precious organization, which is the exemplar of purity. So, the way Tabata makes us perceive Zora is the same way the nobles perceive Zara, and without us realizing it, he makes us the discriminating nobles who do not know the true beauty that lies within a person. This thus gives us another perspective, where we understand what a noble's thought processes are, and in fact makes us sympathize with that mindset before revealing the truth, thus making the reader realize that a book is not its cover. Tabata is a genius at subtlety, and the quality of his writing just oozes out in this example. Now, how does this connect with Julius? To answer that, let's take a look at the death of Zara Ideale a little deeper. Zara had done the impossible. He had gone beyond his limits and become the first peasant Magic Knight. This is usually where most shonen stop their progression of discrimination. Keep fighting and you'll be able to beat them at their own game. But of course, there are exceptions, especially in the previous precedents made. For example, let's take a look at Naruto vs Neji, where he beats Neji and proves that even if you are not destined for greatness, you can work hard and achieve your goals and defeat that destiny. Before that, Lee vs Gaara happens. Now this seems perfect. You can defeat destiny if you work hard, but not all the time. Great, right? When we're shown that God-given power defeats natural talent, but is masked as hard work, and then we're also shown that actual hard work loses against natural talent again, the thematic impact is lost horribly. But fortunately, Tabata subverts the generic shonen expectation where he kills off Zara, who persevered and overcame discrimination only to fall victim to it regardless. In fact, him succeeding was the trigger for his death. Now, the reason why I say he subverts expectation is in how he handles Julius immediately after this. Such a minor event in the grand scheme of things. A commoner died. Who cares, right? Wrong. It does matter who cares. It matters even if it's only one person who cared. Zara's death is the ultimate reason why characters like Asta and Yuno were even able to think of becoming Magic Knights despite being peasants. This is because of one person who cared. Julius Novachrono. He spent the rest of his life to ensure that those like Zara would never have to waste their lives meaninglessly. He did this by introducing systems where those who were underprivileged could still succeed, like the star system, and thus gave meaning to Zara's death. But just because Julius tried, it still doesn't mean that the system can change completely. Thus, not even Julius was able to stop discrimination, but his existence and his mindset in itself gives us a glint of hope to the possibility of people changing. Even though it might only be one man per generation, it is still possible, and that is the message that Tabata tries and succeeds at emphasizing. Additionally, making Julius the first person to seriously tackle discrimination is a parallel for Asta to do the same in the future, but it won't be easy, thus leading into our second and final example.
この裁判は最初から貴様が悪魔として裁かれるか
Asta's trial makes a similar implication that Zara's death did. You're the hero of the world who saved the country? Okay, great. Also, you're under arrest because I'm sure you're the one who caused this. Why? Because look at you. You're a commoner, you're a peasant. Of course you're the one who's responsible for this. Now, I'll cite @Kizi Kaido's thread here because they do a phenomenal job of conveying how beautifully this event was handled. Asta's trial in chapters 217 to 220 are a brilliant showcase of bias and scapegoating from a privileged society, tearing down and punishing people who were major contributing factors in saving the entire kingdom. But due to aspects of his birth, Asta and Nero, who had difficult circumstances, had no way to explain what happened and were not given a fair trial. I would like to include here how differently this same scenario played out for Langris, a noble who attacked a fellow Magic Knight, his own brother, with the intention to kill. Sure, his parents had to grovel in front of the king, but not for 1 second did we even have the shadow of a doubt that he was going to get imprisoned or killed or executed or whatever, right? Now, I haven't personally faced discrimination with legal justice, but if you have, I'm sure you understand what just happened here. A noble was let off with just something like a warning, or that was the intention, but a peasant who didn't even do nothing wrong was imprisoned or was planned to be imprisoned or, executed or whatever, and only because of connections he was able to save himself. This speaks to how truly thoughtful the entire topic of discrimination is in Black Clover. So much thought has been put into it. It feels so realistic. I will touch upon this a little bit later on as well, so stay tuned. But continuing on. This completely subverts typical shonen tropes by forcing the hero of the story to still be just as, if not more, discriminated against in his home country, despite having gone through the typical training and progression most shonen heroes get, which is rather uncommon for what is supposedly such a generic and derivative series. For most shonen MCs, this would be the point where they stopped being the underdog of the society and started being respected by their peers, and while Asta has certainly obtained that from his close friends and a number of select individuals, mainly from the lower classes, he's still far from the country's hero. So far, in fact, that he's currently basically a prisoner, just not being treated like one in large part because the Black Bulls don't follow many rules or regulations as is. Finally, I would like to take you back to the beginning where I spoke about Naruto and My Hero Academia. First, Naruto was considered a hero immediately after he saved the village from pain, and the fact that the monster inside him destroyed their village only a couple decades ago became irrelevant immediately, even though he lost control to that monster during this very fight. Secondly, with MHA, the entire struggle of the non-hero class is majorly shelved into Shigaraki's character. We do not even see a citywide or society-wide or countrywide effect of this discrimination. We only see individuals who have decided to become evil as a result of small flaws in the hero society, which is clearly only trying to do its best. And even these individuals aren't the quirkless. They all have some kind of psychological problems that have led them astray as in the real world, and doesn't have anything to do with their quirk. This theme is tackled not with the world it's set in, but the quirks feel like an add-on to something which should have taken a backseat compared to what makes this world different from ours. So ultimately, what does this do? This paints a picture where the hero society is in fact good, but it's just a few bad apples, or you can't save them all, and does not go into depth into how and why and what can be done to fix it. It merely exists as a plot point and does not address a more relevant theme with regards to something like systemic racial prejudice, which is the obvious pick for a modern day hero society where people are literally born with animal heads. The opportunity for people who dislike the way other humans look to be prejudiced against them is rampant and would have been perfect for the themes of this series to tackle, but has been missed out on. But with Black Clover, this sort of is in line with what it tackles, but in a world that is far removed from our own. It does this beautifully where it tells you change is possible, but it's going to be a very, very, very difficult road ahead of you, and you'll have to have a lot of strength mentally, physically in this world particularly, and there's a lot of things that you need to do, and sometimes you may fail, but at the end of the day, it's the struggle that matters, and when you get to the end, you can overcome. And therein lies the reason why Black Clover tackles discrimination the best and why it should be praised a lot more for it. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching the video. Also, huge shout out to Emorality and Tempest who helped me edit this video and edit the script respectively, and hopefully we'll be able to make more of these videos. I'm planning on making probably a Royal Knights exam arc analysis video in the future, so yeah, stay tuned for that. In any case, I'm Buzzard and hope you have a great day.